on Des Moines News Radio, 1040 WHO.
We are live at the Iowa State Fair in the Crystal Studio here on the Simon Conway Show, and I'm very pleased to say that just sat down next to me is Congressman Thaddeus McCotter. Thad, I believe you prefer. Is that right?
Well, I get called a lot of things these days, so I'll take whatever I can get that's mentionable on your air.
Absolutely. And, of course, he is a GOP candidate for President of the United States and holds a unique distinction here in Iowa tonight because despite, as far as I can tell, qualifying on every single level, you are not taking part in a debate tonight. So let's get straight to that.
Well, the Republican Party of Iowa has been great. It's been a pleasure working with them. Their criteria that they voted out of their state committee, we met it. We then ran into opposition from their partner in the debate, Fox News, about national polling. Now, we've had trouble, for whatever reason, not getting listed on national polls. So the ones that we could cobble together, we submitted them to them. They did not think that they met their criteria. So what's done is done. I'm looking forward to Saturday. We're treating it as an introduction to the voters of Iowa. And hopefully we can hear from some people, meet some people, and see if they respond to the message.
And you decided fairly late to jump in. What made you decide to do that?
Well, there were a lot of candidates that wound up not doing it. Obviously, people like Governor Huckabee. You did not have Governor Daniels or Governor Barber decide to run. And I believe that two of the issues that are near and dear to my heart and the hearts of many Americans are not being addressed. The first is that we have to fundamentally restructure the failed Wall Street banks to get credit flowing again in the United States, because that'll be the basis of making sure that we have an economy that can grow when it gets into the hands of the entrepreneurs and the innovators and workers. Secondly, the recognition of communist China as a strategic threat, rival model of governance, because that's how they treat us, and it's about time we started reciprocating.
Yeah, and you're not wrong on either of those levels. But see, the thing that bothers me the most, and I still think it's true of frankly everybody who's running, is that nobody on the left or the right, in the GOP or in the Democrats, is actually being honest about the depth of the financial problem that we are facing right now. You know, everyone's trying to sell this debt ceiling hike as a cut, but it was actually just a cut in the increase. In terms of next year, in terms of real money from discretionary spending, $7 billion. I mean, it's nonsense. And of course, now we're going to get a $22 trillion deficit in 2021 instead of a $24 trillion deficit in 2021. But nobody's talking about the unfunded obligations. And the analogy I use is it's like, you know, the cell phone bill is going to arrive and you can't not count it just because it hasn't dropped through the mail yet.
Right, only government accounting would consider the outstanding Social Security obligations as not being part of the overall budget problem. But the reality is, as you rightly point out, we have to address them. That's why I think the House Republicans were very responsible in putting forward Medicare reforms to inject pace and choice and control into the provision of those entitlement benefits to get rid of the costs. And we were assailed for it, but that's part of the job. That's why I'm also going to be introducing legislation on Social Security, which will allow people to collect part of their benefits up front, build them up over a period of time. It will not be privatization, it will not be diversion of the payroll tax, but it would help to reduce the long-term obligation. I'm working on it with a man named Peter Ferrara, who's been a leader in entitlement reform, and he believes it would be the greatest government debt reduction in human history. So we're going to be dropping that relatively shortly as soon as Congress gets back.
Don't you think we should be saying to those people under 30 or 35, I mean, pick a number, but it's certainly in the 30s, that we're very sorry, there isn't going to be any for you. You've got 25 years to make your own arrangements, but we just don't have the money. Shouldn't we be saying that now?
No, I don't think we have to. That's part of the reason I'm introducing the legislation, although, Simon, I do agree with you. Look, I'm Generation X. On the front edge of it, granted, but people younger than me believe they're never going to see it. But that doesn't mean that the system has to be completely discarded. It just has to be restructured for the 21st century, which again would allow people to get their benefits up front over a period of time so they could invest it, they could save it, and they would be able to help subsidize their retirement. One of the things that we, as you rightly point out, with the fiscal mess that we're in, is we have to restructure government for the 21st century. That means changing the root premises of the welfare state, which we're seeing implode all around us, and as the downgrade proved. Because everything in your life is leading you back to self-government.
Yep.
It's leading you back to making your own decisions, the communications revolution. I mean, look, if you can talk on a BlackBerry around the world or purchase a good or service or find your own source of information on the internet, it's insane to continue to try to make people who are self-reliant dependent on government and letting a bureaucrat make those decisions.
I mean, I don't try and softball anybody, but is government the answer or is government the problem?
I think responsible government that leads and encourages self-government and the pursuit of happiness within a free economy is the way to go. I do not believe in anarchy. I'm not a libertarian. I think I'm more of an Edmund Burke, Reagan Catholic Republican.
Okay, well, we've got plenty more to come. We're going to take a quick time out for some traffic. We're in studio with GOP presidential candidate Thaddeus McCotter here on the Simon Conway Show, live from the Iowa State Fair in the Crystal Studios. Congressman, I've got to tell you that everybody I asked about you told me two things. One is you're a funny guy, very dry sense of humor, which I love. And you kind of proved that in Congress, because we got a little bit of audio. I believe you entitled it "How to Speak Democrat." Can I have that, please, Andrew?
We're going to learn how to speak Democrat today. Often we heard the word change, which translates into the 1970s. As used in a sentence, Democrats will bring you change. Translation, Democrats will bring you the 1970s. Government means socialism. Democrats support proactive government. Translation, Democrats support proactive socialism. The rich means you. For example, Democrats will only tax the rich. Translation, Democrats will only tax you. Ouch. End means lose. Democrats will end the Iraq War. Translation, Democrats will lose the Iraq War. I hope this exercise has been instructive.
See, now, that's funny stuff. I mean, it's all true and therefore scary and fits in with the theme of my show, which is most of what we talk about is funny and not funny all at the same time. The other thing people told me about you was this is the smartest candidate you're going to meet.
Oh, it's a low bar, but thank you for that.
Therefore proving the funny part. But yeah, I mean, everybody I ask about you says you're a very smart man. And we should pay more attention to you than the nation is paying to you right now.
Well, that's really up to me. I disagree with that. I think everybody's smart. Look, I was homely and I read a lot in high school. That's the only reason that people say that. But I think that what you have to do as a candidate is get the message out and see if people respond to it. I'm going to try to do that. Sometimes you use humor to make a point. Sometimes the subject matter you just can't, and it's not appropriate. In the final analysis, you try to make those judgments. And like one time I went to the House floor and we were discussing one of the budget issues. Yep. And it was morning hour, and everybody tends to stay on their talking points. So as I was waiting my turn in line, I decided that I would just do something that I thought was very normal for somebody my age or maybe younger. I decided to throw some Led Zeppelin song titles into the floor remarks. And it seemed to get a lot of people's attention, and I think it brought their minds around to looking at the Republican perspective in a way that they might not have looked at it before if they'd have just heard the talking points.
Do you remember some of the ones you used?
Oh, I used cashmere, although I used it in the context of a sweater. I know it's a place when Zeppelin wrote it. I mean, I don't know if I used dazed and confused, but that's always appropriate for Washington. I certainly didn't use the Lemon song at any point in time.
And I'm very pleased to say you brought your guitar in today. You're gonna play us a song a bit later on. That's very kind of you. I love your guitar, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I'll play a little something for you. You asked.
Absolutely.
Enough. Ordinarily, I only play for money.
That's a very pretty guitar, and pretty is perhaps the wrong word.
Made right here in the United States. But
it was a good night. Let's have somebody join us on the phone here right now. Let's talk to Butch in Winterset. Hi, Butch.
Hey, Simon. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. You got a question for the congressman?
Well, I sure do. I have, you know what? The one question that I would like to ask, that most politicians that I've heard and I've talked to and whatever, they always have they ask about, they talk out of both sides of their mouth. They say one thing and they do it something else. I want to know what the congressman thinks about that. I mean, it's
okay.
I think it's the government for the people. I think.
Okay, let's ask him. Thanks for the call, Butch. I mean, I do say that when it comes to politicians, and I'm not deliberately trying to offend you, I'm in the school of they pretty much all suck. There are exceptions, and we talked about one of them, and we're very blessed to have him in Iowa, which is Steve King. But it does seem that so many politicians, particularly once they get to Washington, D.C., just change.
Well, I've seen the polling data that says Congress has a 6% approval rating, and my first response was that the poll had a margin of error of 6%. But the reality is every individual is different, but the collective in Congress, it just tends to be as if you could put some really good musicians in a band and it turns out to be flock of seagulls instead. That sometimes the collective result is less than the individual wholes. And what you have is you have districts across the country that send them there. Now, look, I reject the Washington mindset. I'm from Detroit. We're very practical people.
Yep.
I can't stand the fact that they think that they're somehow Hollywood for ugly people. And being an ugly person, I can say that. But it's not Hollywood. It's where you go serve your sovereign citizens. I'm a servant, and one day I'll get a promotion back to the status of sovereign citizen. And if you remember who you work for, you'll do your job and you won't embarrass people. You try to make things a little better. That's the job.
But that's the minority. I mean, that's great. That's the answer we want to hear from everybody. But that's the minority these days. Most people up there just don't behave that way.
Well, I think that what you're seeing, and I'd like to point out that I know that Winterset is the birthplace of John Wayne, is that...
I gotta laugh.
I have been in Iowa.
There you go.
Is that you're seeing a very challenging period of time for the country. This is not an ordinary time, as has been pointed out. We have generational crises. We have deeply held beliefs. I think you're seeing the implosion and the changes within government itself, within society, that are akin to the types of challenges the United States faced going into the 20th century. When we went into industrialized economy, we're going into a globalized economy. You're seeing the changes in the government, changes in the way people live that are causing great upset, great chaos. And so when you see people who have great differences arguing over the issues of the day, you can say to yourself that they're not getting anything done or that they're horrible people. But in the end, we have peaceful revolutions every 2 years. You've seen great changes in 06, great changes in 08, great changes in 10, and you will continue to see it until the people are satisfied the representatives do what they're supposed to do.
Okay, if you're on the phone, please stay there. We will get to you, I assure you. Plenty more to come with Congressman Thaddeus McCotter. This is the Simon Conway Show here on News Radio 1040 WHO. So we are in studio, in the Crystal Studio here at the Iowa State Fair with Congressman Thaddeus McCotter. We're going to take a couple of calls. Let's first of all go to Mark. Hi, Mark. You're on the Simon Conway Show, and the Congressman can hear every word you're saying.
Quick question, and then I'll get off and he can answer it. How does he feel about congressional earmarks, and maybe because of the current budget, it's time to get rid of them?
Okay, all right.
That's a very good question. House Republicans abolished earmarks when we came to the majority. Individuals like myself abolished them prior to that ban. And you're absolutely right, as we understand. You cannot have earmarks. It's one way to, it was an abusive process, and it's one of the wasteful spending items that has to go, and it didn't under the new majority.
One of the questions we get asked a lot, and I know it's not a huge deal financially in the big scheme of things, but everybody wants to know why Congress doesn't take a pay cut.
We've frozen congressional pay at this point in time, and I think that was the appropriate thing to do. We did it well before this latest problem with the downgrade, and I think that it's something that we're going to continue to hold in place, if not reduce in the future, and I think it's something that will be on the table as we go into the quote-unquote super committee when they put their capes and cowls on and start to come up with ways to cut the federal budget so we can get our downgrade upgraded.
And do you think the super committee is constitutional?
Oh, I think it is. It's a committee of Congress. Congress can create the committees that it wants. It still comes back to the members of the House, members of the Senate for a vote. It still has to be enacted into law the same way. Approval of majority of both chambers and go to the president for his signature. In fact, one of the things that we saw under the Democratic majority was major bills being essentially drafted by their leadership as opposed to going through the committee process. And so rather than have this type of budget cutting and reform being done by the leadership in the House or by the leadership in the Senate, to set up a committee is actually going to be a way to get more members to look at it than has been done in the recent past.
So why are people referring to it as a super Congress?
I don't know. People refer to it as a super committee. People refer to it as anything. To me, it has to pass both the Senate and the House as a matter of a majoritarian vote, and then it has to go to the president for his signature. So the result is the same. The process is the same. Now, like so many people, we all wish that it had not come to the point and that the ordinary course of committee business in Congress had come to be enough to solve the problem. but that's not where we find ourselves at present, and the urgency of actually meeting those targets and exceeding them, treating them as a floor for cuts rather than a ceiling, I think will be facilitated by this process.
And are you happy with the makeup of this committee, at least on the Republican side?
It doesn't matter if I'm happy or not. I think we have good people there that'll put the best interest of the country forward.
Well, I see that. We don't allow political answers in here, so I'm going to ask you again. Are you happy with the makeup of that committee from a GOP point of view?
Well, no, Simon. The politicians